we are talking about a tool that you have free access to. So I'm going to encourage you to play around with something that you've learned. And I got to tell you, I just want to get this out of the way here too, because I've done a couple of these PDs on ChatGPT. I want you to know that this entire session that I'm facilitating is meant to be conversational and informal. By conversational, that doesn't mean that you have to necessarily participate actively, but you can definitely interact in the chat. Melissa can unmute you if you need to, if you feel the need to share something, because this to me is about sharing resources, sharing ideas, right? In no way am I a ChatGPT expert of experts. I use it, I play around with it, I study it on how it's used in education, and I think it's obviously something impactful and something that we need to keep our focus on, right? So we're going to start off with something I'm going to do in the chat. I was going to use this app called Slido, which is really awesome because you can integrate it into your Google Slides. But there are several tabs that I want to share with you up here. You can see these tabs up here. We're going to be using these tabs over the course of the session. So if I actually used my Slido, it would take those tabs away, and I don't want to do that right now. But I'm going to encourage you to go into Slido later on. It's free for 3 polls. It's kind of like Mentimeter or Kahoot. It's not as gamey as Kahoot. It's like just a nice interactive polling app that you may want to use if you're a teacher or if you're doing professional developments. But for us, for our purpose, let's just answer in the chat. What is something you would like for ChatGPT, which is an artificial intelligence app, or AI, artificial intelligence, do for you? What would you like artificial intelligence to do for you? This can be professional, it can be personal. Drop that in the chat. Let me know what you think you would like ChatGPT or artificial intelligence to do for you. The laundry, yes, right? I mean, come on, write grants. You know, that's actually, Blake, I'm going to tell you, writing grants, the ChatGPT can kind of help with that. Grading papers, yes, it actually can. Generating quality essay prompts. We're actually going to talk about the healthy menu piece later. I see another write grants. What we're going to figure out is how to get it to what we want to do by convincing it that it's the right thing to do, right? Because one thing I've noticed about ChatGPT is it's not what a lot of people are scared of. A lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, it does so many different things. I'm really kind of anxious about it. I wouldn't be anxious about it right now. It's less Skynet, Terminator, artificial intelligence, and more like, think if you had a friend, and I think we all have a friend like this. Think of a friend that you have who's pretty smart, pretty confident, but they kind of embellish a little bit sometimes. They get some facts wrong sometimes. They might, you know, get some facts in the story wrong. They may like kind of say things that, you know, that may not be true, but they sound good saying it, right? Because they're very self-confident. What I've noticed, ChatGPT and Google's version of ChatGPT, which is called Bard, they have that in common. And we're going to talk about some of these implications of this. And again, remember, this session is limited to ChatGPT 3.5, which is essentially the public-facing version of ChatGPT. You can go ChatGPT 4, has different features, but we're not going to talk about that because that's a paid feature. I want to talk about things that are free today, okay? But also I want you to remember, I'm not going to be going into this in detail. We're not going to be hitting everything because we only got 2 hours and really hour and a half, because I don't want to keep you too long, okay? So let's look at some of these implications, right? we've talked about these aspects here. I don't know why I did that. I know you've read articles about people concerned about academic dishonesty, but also I want to talk about accusations of the actual accusations of academic dishonesty. Because on one hand, sure, can a student go in there and say, hey, write me an essay about elephants? Well, by all means, yes, they can, right? It is up to us as educators, and I'm going to say something kind of controversial here, okay? But we as educators can be lulled into a sense of resting on our laurels sometimes, of letting things just kind of happen and reusing the same techniques and material that we've used over time, because it takes a lot of time and investment of mental energy and passion to create lesson plans and activities and grade with good authentic feedback, and all of that takes time. And so we don't want to give that up a lot. So what I've noticed is a lot of teachers fall back on this idea of, okay, look, I need to make sure these kids know a particular topic. So what's the best way for me to have them demonstrate that they know something? Well, let me have them write an essay about it. Well, now the chickens have come home to roost, and students now have a way of writing for us an essay about any topic, right? We have a couple of choices here, and I think our best choices are, number one, we need to educate ourselves on what artificial intelligence output looks like. Like, what does an essay written about elephants written by ChatGPT look like? How do I make sure that I accustom myself to that language, right? But also ask myself, and this is more important, I think, why am I asking for this essay? Why do I not ask them for a 30-second video? Why do I not ask them just to talk about it in class? Can this be a formative assessment, or does it have to be an essay that I'm going to regret having to grade during spring break, right? To me, I think we need to be very much more conscientious about the assessments that we give our students. Instead of just saying, hey, do this because I need to get a grade in the grade book, we need to be thoughtful about, what do I really need students to do to demonstrate that they know this, right? Knowing that this is not going anywhere. I don't care if schools block ChatGPT. I don't care if they make it a paid service, whatever. This is here to stay, right? Because you can go on YouTube, you can go on Reddit, you can go any social media out, you'll see ChatGPT is the thing right now because there are money-making opportunities for it, right? And that's why I think we need to think about these 2 bullet points: who gets access and what features will cost money. We need to be thinking about this, guys, because one, if it does get blocked at a school, well, you're still going to have kids who have access to it. I guarantee you my son would still have access to it because he can get on a hotspot on his phone and have access to it, right? What features are going to cost money? Who's that going to leave behind, right? This, again, may be controversial, but I'm going to tell you this. Rather than fighting ChatGPT and artificial intelligence, I think we need to be mindful of it. We need to, understand the implications of it, certainly, but also walk through and say, okay, what does this mean for my practice? And what are the potential major implications where I need to start talking to my legislators, and you start talking to school administrators or school board, or whatever, and not do this chicken little sky is falling kind of thing, but rather this is here and there's actually a lot of potential for all of us. We just need to make sure that we walk smartly. The same reaction to ChatGPT that we're seeing right now, I can guarantee you, we had the same reaction when Wikipedia came out. We had the same reaction when we had internet access. We had all of this, okay? So let me show you this. This prevalence of inaccurate or fabricated information. I'm gonna talk about this in a second, but I just saw something in the chat. This right here, this is your URL to get to ChatGPT. But to be honest with you, I never typed that in. I just bookmarked it after I Googled it. I Googled ChatGPT, found it, and then I bookmarked it. So I'll have it when I need it. Okay. It is a web app. And if like if I go here, I'm gonna copy that just so you can see the process here. Open a new tab and I type that in there, I enter. It's going to take me to this company's website. The company is called OpenAI, and they have several different artificial intelligence applications. Their most popular one is ChatGPT. Okay, that's under product, ChatGPT, and that's going to try to load it up. It's probably not going to load it up for me because I already have it loaded up right here. Okay. All right, and we're going to be using this here in a second. In fact, I was telling my wife yesterday, I'm just going to kind of let this be informal. I'm just going to kind of play around with it because I want y'all to see it in real time. I don't want to create any kind of scripted output or anything like that because I want to tell you, ChatGPT is not perfect, and we need to roll with that. We need to kind of understand that there are positive and potentially harmful implications of ChatGPT. So we need to just kind of see it like any other tool. You can do good with a hammer, you can do bad with a hammer, and we're going to want to do good with this. Okay. I just want to cover these last two things really quickly. Okay. Then we're going to get into all the tips and stuff like that. This prevalence of inaccurate or fabricated information. I'm going to tell you just a very quick story. So I do a lot of research, and a lot of my research has to do with the inequity in our school accountability system here in Arkansas. And so I was, thinking, all right, let me see if I'm missing something here. I use my usual sources to find information and do my research, but let me see what ChatGPT and Google's Bard have to say about this topic. So I'm like, I go into ChatGPT and say, hey, is there any research that would help me illustrate the inequities in our school accountability system? Oh, yeah. There's this piece right here. I'm like, oh, wow, that's exactly what I need. And ChatGPT is a conversational model. Like you can actually have a conversation with it, right? So I'm like, oh, that's great. So, okay, so give me a citation for that. Oh, well, that's so-and-so and so-and-so. Well, what year was it? I'm trying to draw out this information, right? I said, so how would I find this, journal article? Because they gave me a title and everything. It was like the inequities of state accountability systems. I'm like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I need. And it's, here are my authors. Here's the recent year that it was published, everything. I'm like, this is great. So I'm looking for it. I cannot find it anywhere. So I actually reach out to the authors and I say, hey, do you have a copy of this article that you wrote in 2020 about the school accountability systems? And they go, oh, we did something similar to that, but we didn't write any article like that. I'm like, whoa, so this does not exist? And they said, no. We wrote something that's similar to it, but it's not quite that. And I'm like, well, thank you for your time and everything. So I went back to ChatGPT and I said, wait a second, did you just make this up? And it said, yes, I'm sorry. I'm just a language model, but I thought that that's what you would want. And I'm kind of furious. I'm like, oh my God, I said, do you realize how unethical that is? And ChatGPT replied with yes, I'm not too happy about that myself, and I won't let it happen again. I'm like, well, doubtful, because that was a big breach. You do not make up research like that. And it said, I will try to do better next time. And for me, I'm like, well, I'm so glad that I didn't just blindly accept whatever it told me existed, right? Because it didn't just say, well, I don't have that information. It literally made up, it fabricated information, and you're going to find that. You will find that a lot of times you will ask it about something that you know a lot about, and you'll say, tell me about this. And then you can say, no, you don't have that right. Yeah, I'm sorry. So you really need to be careful about looking it up. It's not Google, right? ChatGPT is not Google, and even Google will get you some, the Wild West of the internet, right? Do not see ChatGPT as the end all be all of information, right? It is a language model, and its strength is in helping us write better and create better, but not to look up information. Okay, so we need to be really careful about that. And I mentioned the limitations of the status quo because our status quo is, generally speaking, give students essays, give them a task that's quick and easy for them usually, and we grade it and so on and so forth. I'm not saying we get rid of essays totally, and I'm not saying we get rid of all of our assessments, but we do need to start rethinking how we assess our students, using more video, using more one-on-one interaction with students, having fewer big assessments and having more formative assessments. We got to know that this is out there, and shutting it down and locking it down is not going to answer, because there's always going to be someone who's going to have access to it. Okay, so let's shift gears here really quickly. Give me one word, just one word that describes your feelings about artificial intelligence. Try to do it in one word for me, please. Inevitable, curious. Just as Walt Whitman says, don't be judgmental, be curious. Conflicted. Oh, I think I'm right with you, Shauna, on that one. There are things I love about it, and there are things, as Blake put, a little trepidatious, anxiety. We're gonna try to alleviate some of that. I think the answer to a lot of our conflict and our anxiety with this is we need to know as much as we can about it, right? And the more we know about it, and the more we know about how it's being used, the more we can communicate to others about the potential implications. Because I will tell you, there are people who create and work with artificial intelligence who are scared of what it can do. Now, I'm an optimist for the most part, and I'm not very, wow, that was a long cautious. I feel like there are a lot of opportunities, but I am very conflicted. I'm intrigued. I'm excited about it. I want y'all to know that I don't feel that we will get to a place where we have what they call singularity. I'm going to type that word in the chat for you. Singularity has three major meanings in the English language. Singularity, in some sense, means just one event, just one critical event, okay, in general. Another meaning of singularity is the very center of a black hole, from where you do not escape, right? Is that little, the blackest of the black hole, right? It is, the center of a black hole. The other singularity, which is more apropos to what we're talking about today, is the belief by computer ethicists of the time when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. And as you might expect, that is a scary thought, right? Because right now, artificial intelligence is limited by us because of something called GIGO. I'll put that in the chat. That is a concept I actually learned back in 1987 or something like that. I was taking a computer course way back then, and y'all can imagine the changes since then, right? But it's called garbage in, garbage out. It's a fundamental concept of programming. Computer programs have always been limited by what you put into them, right? If there are flaws, if there are bugs, if there are mistakes, it's because a fallible human put those into them, either intentionally or unintentionally, right? Artificial intelligence has the capability of correcting our mistakes. That's how they say it's possible that it could achieve, intelligence beyond us, where it corrects us, right? we are nowhere near there right now. What artificial intelligence is good at right now for the foreseeable future is processing all different sorts of patterns in a very short amount of time, quicker than we can do it. We're going to see examples of what it can do, and it's stuff that we could do if we took the time, if we had the access to the resources, and we had all the time in the world to do it, right? This is that thing where they said you get 1,000 monkeys typing on a typewriter and they can write Shakespeare. Well, we can do it in about a second or two here, right? So let's get into it. Let's dig in, and thank y'all for sharing all of your points, being overwhelmed, conflicted. That's all the hard stuff out of the way. I want everyone to take a deep breath. Artificial intelligence is a tool right now, right? We're going to see examples of that tool. All right. I'm going to use these 3 topics right here. Tell me about this topic. I'm going to copy that, and we'll go over into ChatGPT.
1840s New England. I will speak to you of my acquaintances in the family. The family being her.
I think we got someone. Melissa, could you mute?
Because she hates her mother-in-law.
Thank you. Okay. This is a very simple prompt. Tell me about this topic. How about tell me about the first thing that comes up into my mind are the Peloponnesian Wars. I'm not even spelling it right. I don't remember this. I don't know. I'm just going to leave it unspelled wrong. Look at there. Now, it gives me all kinds of information just like within seconds, right? Okay, that's great. Now, I have all this information at the tip of my fingers, and if I'm a typical educator, I'm going to be smart about this. I'm going to say, okay, gave me all this information, give me some quick stuff. I think what I'm going to do too is I'm going to cross-reference this with another source to make sure that this is accurate information. But you know what? To be honest with you, let's be honest, right? I don't even want to read all this. I just want to know a quick thing, right? So it gives me all this information. So how about I say ELI 10? ELI stands for explain. Explain it like I'm 10 years old. You can write out explain it like I'm 10 years old, but a little code is ELI. Now let's change it to 5 years old. Explain this this passage. So it's going to use it simpler language because I don't got a lot of time. I want it just to tell me really quickly. All right. So again, one of the strengths of ChatGPT is that it can use language very well, right? It can take some complex information and it can simplify it. All right. So there's that. All right. So now I've got that information, but you know what? This may be fine, but what if I want to explain it to a colleague? Okay. How about rewrite this passage with more casual diction and throw in some Gen Z slang terms. So here's the deal. Yo, check it out. They were calling the shots and bossing around a bunch of other cities. Another big shot got jelly and wanted to flex on Athens. Now, see, something like that, that's how my son would explain it to his friends. Right? All right. So are y'all seeing, I'd love to see in the chat, what do you think? I mean, is that useful? Being able to change the tone and be very specific about how you want like to reach the audience. think about if you have a topic that you're teaching or a concept that you are dealing with, you could put that in ChatGPT and then kind of throw it in there. And like for me, I have students, I'll talk about academic honesty. I can say, explain why academic honesty is important to students as if they were 5 years old, And I think anytime we can break something down like that, it is so very much useful. Now, you can do that with just looking up information, right? And that's great. But also, there are a lot of times we're busy people, right? And we love reading up on things, but honestly, some pieces call up to us more than others, right? I pulled up this website here. This instantly got my attention yesterday. Hyperdimensional computing reimagines artificial intelligence. This is the kind of stuff that I love to read. However, I started looking at it and I'm like, oh, that's a lot more than I have time for. I've got a PD I got to work on for tomorrow, and I've got all these other things. I don't think I want to read all that. So what I do is I go to the website, I just kind of select a word here, and then I do a little trick here. I want to copy all the text in this article, okay? So I just selected a word. I'm gonna go all the way down to the bottom, and to the bottom. I'm gonna hold my shift key. I'm gonna hold my shift key. And I'm going to click at the very end. And you'll notice that it copies all the text. Now, the bad news is it's copying all the text. That means even with this kind of stuff. But ChatGPT is pretty smart, and it's going to know that that's not really part of this text, right? It's going to ignore this text. So I'm going to copy that text, and I'm going to say, oh, no, I think I'm going to do this. Outline the following article for me. And I'm just going to paste it in there. Okay. So you notice I pasted it in there and it's a long article. Outline the following article for me. Okay. And I'm going to do that. Okay. So it gave me an advertisement. It gave me a little bit more information. Okay. There we go. That's all the stuff that I put in there. Okay, let's go down. So what it did was it broke it into topics. Can you imagine telling a student, hey, I want you just to jot some ideas down? I don't know about y'all, but I always had trouble outlining stuff because my mind goes all over the place. But boy, I could free write like there's no tomorrow, right? And just let me put in all of my thoughts. Right. And I did that actually yesterday with this PD. I was just brainstorming different things that I wanted to share with y'all. And I said, okay, take all of these and put these in a logical order for me. And that's what you see here. It told me, well, these three go under background and understanding. You see what I'm saying? This to me, I could do this all day long. If ChatGPT only did this, I would be thrilled. And speaking of conclusion, did you know that if I took, I'm just going to take a little bit of this text right here. Let's pretend that you wrote this text right here, okay? Right, no, I'm going to go in new chat because I want to make sure it knows that I'm doing something like that. Take the following text and write me an introduction and a conclusion. Can you imagine if you wrote reports and you wrote the meat of it, and then you put in your text, and it could write for you an introduction and a conclusion? Now, for me, I'm a former high school English teacher, right? So I'm going to have a particular specifics of what I care about in here, right? But I'm not going to just take this and copy and paste it into my thing, to my final draft. What I want to do is take this and massage it a little bit to fit my own style, but at least this gives me, and this is how I would phrase it to students. students need to see this as a springboard. It is not the actual pool that you swim in. It is your springboard, and the real skill is going to come from you when you take what it does for you. Because think about how long it takes just to, like, I need to summarize this information, and it takes me forever to just to do that, right? But this gives, especially our struggling students, a little bit more of an opportunity to say, okay, I've got somewhere to start now, right? But I can take this and I can say, okay, all right, okay, so rewrite these in my style. And it's going to rewrite, because you know what I did before this? You can put in text and you can say, train to learn my style. And you can type in, you can put in your own text in there. I'm going to put in that same thing. And now it's writing the whole thing for me, right? It's scary crazy how fast it can pick up my style of writing, right? And it's not just my style, it's everyone's style. I can say this, and y'all, I just want y'all to know, I go all over the place on here. So you're going to notice that when we go back to the slide deck, I'm going to say, oh, we already did that. We already did that. Watch that. Okay. Dawn, I'm going to answer your question here in a second about if it can recognize it, if it were the author. Right. Carmen, let me show you this. Rewrite this as an 8th grader. And there you go. How about this? Rewrite this as if it were written by Maya Angelou. Like a mesmerizing overture. That is so her, right? Okay. We could do this. Rewrite in style of Dr. Seuss. Hyperdimensional computing. I triumph. It's true. Rewrite this as if it were a song by Prince. And there you go. Rewrite as if written by Taylor Swift. And it assumes I want the song because I just talked about the song, right? So, Shauna, when you talk about reality is over, see, that's the thing that we need to think about, right? We each have a discernible style, right? And I think as an English teacher, I spend a lot of time explaining to students what style looks like, right? Just like our clothes, right? And the artificial intelligence's power is recognizing patterns, right? It recognizes those patterns and it can recompose patterns, it can break down the patterns and recompose those patterns in like microseconds, right? That's the scary part about this, right? But it's also an exciting part about this too, because like if I were doing this in a classroom, I would say, look, I want you to use ChatGPT. Yeah, I would tell them to use the tool. I want you to use ChatGPT to rewrite this article in the language of your favorite singer, right? Or poet or whatever, or celebrity. And then I want you to explain it, like pitch it to me as a new record or something like that. Because at the end of the day, think about this, guys, at the end of the day, we wanted them to understand this information. And let's be honest, if I told a student, I need you to read this article by tomorrow, you tell me how many people are going to actually do it. You know the answer to that. I was a high school teacher at one time, and I can guarantee you I would have 2 or 3 students who really gave a yeoman's effort, and the rest kind of went through it. And I'm talking about good students, but they're like, that's just a lot. Like, what am I going to get out of this? Because I'm spending a lot of time on this. What isn't it better if the end result of what I want is for you to get the gist of this article? I need you to understand this concept more than anything. Isn't it better to maybe have them put it into their terms and then to give it back to me with an interpretation of some creative way to do that? Heck, because I guarantee you I can put in that article again, okay, like taking the original article I posted, what is the singular main idea in one sentence? And it gives me this. All right, and Kimberly, this plagiarism checker, we're going to talk about that in 2 ways here in a second. It is very inconsistent, and I think we put ourselves in a very difficult situation when we start doing this whack-a-mole of trying to check for plagiarism using ChatGPT. If we know students are going to use it, we need to figure out how they're going to use it right? We need to be thinking of new ways of assessing, and we didn't ask for this. That's right. Like Holly, excellent point, right? If, for example, like for me, instead of saying, hey, I need you to write an essay about William Faulkner, right? Holly, I'm going to go on this, and feel free to add anything else in the chat, because that's a great idea. How about this? How about if I said, what is the most famous passage by Herman Melville? I'm putting Herman Melville because I can't stand him. Too wordy for me, way too wordy. Okay, so he's got, no. I need a longer excerpt, a paragraph. Okay, let's see what he does. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Oh, I had to stop myself from telling ChatGPT, thank you. And would you mind? I couldn't help myself and I stopped. I think I've crashed it. Yeah, everybody hates Herman Melville. Let me regenerate that. Yep, he just doesn't like it. There's it's worse. Come on now. Okay, so apparently you don't like Melville. Okay, give me an excerpt from Stephen King. Okay. Okay, awesome. Okay, so he's got this thrilling paragraph right here, right? And I'm gonna go back to Holly's idea here. And Holly, let me know in the chat if you think this kind of does. Like if I were to assign students this assignment, like I'd say, okay, look guys, I want you to take a famous passage from one of these authors that I tell you, right? And I want you to put it in the style of another author, okay? Take this passage in put it in the style, sorry, of Ernest Hemingway. Okay. I love it. So there's that, right? Now, for me, I would love to ask my students to say, okay, I want you to tell me what are the differences between King style and Hemingway style, right? I want you to give me the differences here, right? Amanda, to your point about AI is scary, it's like anything. Hammers are scary. I saw a video on Reddit the other day of a guy chasing a bunch of pedestrians with a hammer, and he was meaning to do harm. Hammers are scary, right? AI is scary. Cars are scary. You know how many people die by cars? There are so many scary things in this world. It is all about us harnessing these to use for good as much as possible. In many sense, I think the more we are on top of it and forward thinking on this, we change the dynamic of how students see this, because you take average teacher says, hey, I just want you, oh yeah, criminals already starting this. You're absolutely right, Amanda. They're already trying things. You already see people, and it's not just criminals. We're talking about politicians. I know some of y'all might be thinking that might be the same thing, but we're going to keep them separate for right now. But there are some political ads that are using deep fake videos, which are artificially intelligent videos, you know, and audio. One just got in trouble for creating a fake audio using the president's voice, but to say a very wrong message down in Florida. It is scary. It is scary. That's why I think that the more we know about this, we need to be very knowledgeable so we can talk to our legislators about, like, look, you know, let's not knee-jerk this stuff, but we probably do need to have some controls on it. And just so you know, ChatGPT has actually put in some controls, because you can imagine once it went live, the darkest of darkest people would put in all kinds of things, and they had to pull back a little bit. Oh, Brenda, that's a great idea. That is something that's oh, I'm gonna get to that in a second. Holly, does that make sense? If you could just pop that in the chat, if I said, do this in ChatGPT, and then I want you to do an analysis of how's the syntax different? What's the diction differences? You know, that sort of stuff. Because I mean, that to me would be so fun and creative in that sense, right? Because then you get to really, really talk about the meat of what we were talking about, instead of fighting with students about reading this or writing an essay about that, right? Because I'm here to tell you, as someone who taught high school, there are some kids who love to write and some kids who do not. There are adults who love to write and adults who do not. And I think we need to attend to everyone's needs in this sense, and get to the core of what we want, instead of forcing people to do things just the way that we have done them. Holly, that's great. That's great. I'm gonna get to that, your question in the chat about improving student writing, right after I answer Brenda's question about or address Brenda's comment about the giving the title. That's interesting, because I can say, what's that song from the 80s that had something about shelter and justice? This is funny. This is really good. This is great. I'm going to give that a down vote. It's not true. What I wanted it to do, nope, it is completely wrong. There's a song called Shelter by Lone Justice, the band Lone Justice, and it's a deep track. It's not something that many people remember, and it got it completely wrong. So you have to double check these things, right? but you can't say, what's that book that the Shawshank Redemption movie is based on? That's correct. How about the movie Stand By Me? The Body, and that is correct too, right? So it gets things right, it gets things wrong. And I've noticed that the deeper it is, the more you have to really double check it. And it is artificial intelligence. So every time you give it feedback or you tell it it's wrong or you fix it, it's learning from that. That's the whole thing about artificial intelligence. Every time you input something, it is figured out style. It's figuring out how to answer. It's analyzing all those patterns, right? So the more we interact with it, the smarter it gets. Okay. All right. So Holly, about that writing piece, I'm going to go like full tilt bad on this, okay, to illustrate my point. But I think you'll understand the concept whenever I do this, right? So I'm going to do a new chat here. I wrote a fake email that, you know how sometimes you want to tell people certain things, but you know you can't, right? You want to be snarky, but you know you can't, right? So let's say I take this text right here, and I was going to write that. I always write my emails in Google Docs before I put them in Gmail, because I need to edit them, right? Because I don't want to send something that I'm going to regret later. So I'm going to write out what I really want, just free write it without even thinking about it. This is how I really feel, right? So Holly, think about this as like the writing the student might do, right? So if I go in here and I can say, analyze the style of this text. Too many quotation marks here. Oh, it didn't copy the right thing, did it? Huh, that's funny. It used the one that I did from Ernest Hemingway, but that's pretty cool, right? Right? Okay, so that's analyzing the style. Now I can say, what are some ways I can improve this excerpt? Give me just 3 things I can work on. Okay, I'm going to let that sit there and let you read it. How about elaborate more on number 2? And it can go into even more details about each piece. Paula, really, that's your IT. That's your IT people. They are responsible for that. They're the ones who have to filter that, right? The thing is, the thing about legally aren't old enough to use it, we can police that in our classroom as much as we can. Ultimately, it's up to IT to block that site for the age range. But kids are still going to use it outside of that, whether they use a hotspot or at home or whatever. Shauna, on your more direct piece, rewrite this so it's friendly but firm. If you just tell students that and they're using ChatGPT, rewrite my original piece so Oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. Yeah, you sure can. You can tell it a particular style right there. What I was doing right here was illustrating for Holly's question about exploring their own writing, right? Because I think what Holly's getting at, and I don't want to speak for Holly necessarily, but so Holly, correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, but more of a meta analysis kind of thing, like going deeper into their own language and delving deeper into why they're putting certain words there and why, yeah, like a tutor, exactly. That's exactly right. So for me, it is about helping me like kind of see more of what I'm seeing. Like for me, one of the first things I put in here was write this excerpt by Faulkner in the style of Ernest Hemingway, right? And then I would say, like, tell me the difference in the two, right? And help me better understand what you mean by this, right? And you keep going to, this becomes more like a Socratic method, right? And if you could teach kids the whole idea of Socratic method of going deeper and deeper and deeper, you have to remember, kids are going to find their own meaning from any of this stuff. They're going to find their own meaning from anything that you try to teach them, right? Because we live in a constructionist kind of piece, right? Yes, Cheyenne, that scaffolding piece is prime for me, right? Like if I want to, for example, I was talking to a group of elementary kids and they asked me, can you explain quantum computing? And I'm like, and I can hear the conversation in my head. Have you ever noticed that it's really hard sometimes to take what you know it's up here and put it on paper or in digital ink, right? It's very hard. So if I want to scaffold, I can do that, explain it like I'm 5. Or I can say, help my students understand quantum computing in 3 easy steps. Okay, all right. And it's telling me how to teach this in order, how I go from the beginning to the more complex, right? Right. How about this? Rewrite. Okay. Well, it's not. My mouse keeps kicking out. How about this? How about if I say, create a lesson plan for me based on this? Now, don't count on it to give you good resources, right? Don't count on it to be completely up to date. You're going to have to fill in those blanks, which, going back to the plagiarism piece, you know, is this plagiarism? If we tell ChatGPT to do our work for us? And that's for other people to figure out. For me, it's a hammer. And I got a nail that needs to be pounded in the wood. And so I'm going to use my hammer, right? Now, if you have students work on a project, an essay or whatever, one good, clear way to require students to, you know, I don't know, which would make it helpful for you to spot plagiarism, is to require students to cite their references, right? To make sure that they include references that are accurate and cited correctly, right? Because ChatGPT has a very difficult time with that. In fact, sometimes it will create references that don't exist. And we talked about that a second ago, right? So there's that. Okay. How about I go, oh yeah, yeah. Holly's referring to an extension in Google Chrome that you can use called Draftback. I'd encourage y'all to play around with some of these Google Chrome extensions once you start getting the hang of ChatGPT. I'm going to show you a couple, but we're not going to go a lot because we have varied levels of expertise here today. So I do want to point out, going to that little topic that we were just talking about. Just a month ago, we had a professor who failed his entire class, his ag class, because he said everyone used ChatGPT. He ran it, used which one did he use? He used some kind of plagiarism detector, and I think actually he used ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, no, I wrote that. They didn't write it, I wrote it, because ChatGPT is it's a fake little, he's a liar, he's that person that likes to embellish things, right? So he failed his whole class because he wanted to accuse them all of plagiarism. ChatGPT has created its own tool, AI text classifier. It gets mixed results. But again, you can use this. I think it's better to rethink the assessments we give our students and to have more conversations with them and to focus on the end result rather than, because look, I'm just telling you, I remember going to school and getting graded on if I had ruffles on the edges of my paper or my margins. Who cares about margins and ruffles on the paper? Did you answer the question? Did you elaborate? Did you provide research facts? There are certain skills I think that we have gotten away from, right? So anyway, let's go back here. This historical perspective. I do want to tell you about this one. This one I just love. I just think this one's kind of fun. If you teach history or heck, if you just want to understand a current event, right? So I'm gonna do a new chat. It's like, how about this? What are the comparisons between the LBJ administration and Renaissance, a historical thing? Alan, I'm going to try to be less. Nixon brings up a whole lot of things. I actually brought up Nixon yesterday, and it was scathing. Thank you for that. That's interesting, right? All right. So for me, if I'm teaching this, I'd be like, okay, this is what ChatGPT says, guys. So group 1, you're going to talk about this. Group 2, 3, 4. I want you to kind of explore this. I want you to really explore these comparisons, and I want you to prepare for me, like a little presentation or whatever on do they have it right? And I want you to provide for me at least 2 new sources of information that are not ChatGPT that you're going to bring us to, something that is credible, that is not a blog, and something that kind of supports what ChatGPT told us here regarding transformative leadership, right? You see what I'm doing here is I'm taking the tool here and I'm expanding it and putting the students in a place where they have to corroborate the information, which is a skill that is not only critical, but it is lacking in even our adults. Something I want y'all to take away from this is we look at our students as these tabula rasa, as these blank slates of we've got to teach them so many things and they've got to master this. I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to look straight in your virtual eyes right here to do this. Students don't have to master anything to do whatever they want to do in this world. They don't have to master anything. That is not true, because we see people who make mistakes all the time. We see people who do wrong things all the time with plagiarism, with ethics, whatever. Our job is to stop that in the best way that we can. So we're not going to hold our students to a higher standard than we hold our own populace, the adults in our populace too, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to expect students to understand the concepts because they're still young and they are still developing their understanding. And I'm telling you one thing, students are going to remember how you cultivated this understanding of a topic more than, oh, I had to do this essay that was 4 pages long, right? I don't think many of y'all remember the multiple choice test that you took as much as you remember the projects that you did, right? So we want to focus on like a more conversational, more understanding process of learning and assessment. And ChatGPT does give us that, and we just have to be on top of it, right? Okay, so there's that one. I love that, by the way. Oh, Hayden, yes. For example, like, are you talking about historical piece like an actual document or the description of an event? The Shakespeare thing is easy. I'm going to show you that here in a second, right? Like, for example, like if I took this, let me just take this text right here. Because remember, it knows style. Rewrite this as a scene in a Shakespearean play. Boop, beep, boop. Okay. How about this? Well, that's, for me, the fun of this as an English teacher is I would have my students act it out or walk through it and say, what parts does it have right? What parts does it have wrong? It's kind of like Google Translate. Some of it's going to be right. Some of it's going to be wrong, which, by the way, oh, Jennifer and Hayden, let me show you something, because I've got to show you something really cool about this. Let's do Declaration of Independence, because I'm going to show you a few things on here, right? Transcription, perfect. We whole win the course, blah, blah, blah. We're just going to do this part right here. Okay, so I'm going to do a new chat just because I want it all fresh. Okay. We're going to say adapt this to modern language. Let's say Gen Z, right? How about break this down? How about this? Rewrite this to include a couple of bullet points. Well, it didn't do what I asked it to do, but now you get your PowerPoint right there, right? Okay. How about this? I'm going to put this back in here. I'm going to do a new chat. So there's your modern language, right? You can just copy, it's just really copying and pasting text, right? How about this one? Let's say you have some ESL students, ELL students. How about write this in Spanish? This one's easy because this is Google Translate, really, right? Okay, so it's going to take the Declaration of Independence and it's going to rewrite it in Spanish. But here's the thing, right? I mean, there's a difference between Spanish and there's a Spanish, formal Spanish. And okay, rewrite this in a more casual tone of Spanish with slang terms and limit it to one paragraph. Now, I don't know Spanish slang that I can say over Zoom, but I'm going to assume that it knows because I can see some differences. Sostenemos and lo tenemos. I can see some changes there. But you notice it doesn't always do exactly what you want because it made it 2 paragraphs and not 1. But think about the power of this with your ESL students, right? For me, Jennifer, on that Declaration of Independence in Modern Language, for me as a teacher, I'd be like, I want you to get into ChatGPT, have it write it in modern language, and I want you to see if it's accurate. Just asking students to find out if ChatGPT is accurate puts them in a position where they become a teacher and a learner. It's a breakup letter. I love it, Holly. You will be back. My wife says that there's a Hamilton song for every situation, right? I think she's right. Okay, so there's that. Awesome, awesome. Okay. We did talk about that. We talked about this. Oh, there's another thing too. I'm going to show you something that's just insane. And if y'all think y'all are anxious about this, try to be a computer programmer today. Write me Python code for an app that is a timer that I could enter the time and then have the screen change to yellow at 1 minute left and red at 15 seconds left. So, guys, the people who make mucho dinero programming apps, software engineers, this was able to create something in like literal seconds, right? Literal seconds. Now, if I were a code engineer, a software engineer, I would copy this code and I would go through it to see if it's accurate, if it ran, what are the bugs, because ChatGPT is not perfect, right? But I'd be looking at it as like, okay, it's either going to take my job or it's going to help me in my job, right? So, because if you notice when I asked it to create a lesson plan, it's not going to replace a teacher, right? There's no way it can replace a teacher, but if it can help me be a better teacher, because I don't have to spend all my time trying to organize my thoughts, and it can give me it can scaffold me, it can kind of give me kind of a springboard to go forward. Get out of here, you know, I mean, I'll take that any day. Okay. We talked about the create the outline. You can have it summarize text for you. Oh, TLDR. I'm going to copy this whole thing. TLDR is the millennial way of saying too long, didn't read. And I'm going to put in that whole text. And then it pretty much gives you a summary. It's pretty darn good. And remember, the difference between a summary and a paraphrase, right? This is a summary. TLDR brings you a summary. So if you're asked to read something and you don't feel like you have time, but you want to read it, like something like this, TLDR it, and it'll give you a nice, good, okay, I know enough. Like if you forgot to read it right before the meeting that you have to discuss it or something. Okay. We did talk about AI text classifier. I'm gonna let y'all kind of play around with that. I want to show you this piece right here. This here is a Chrome extension called YouTube Summary with ChatGPT. And remember, y'all, I'm going to share this slide deck with y'all, so it has all these notes and stuff like that in there, so you don't have to write this down. But if you install this in Chrome, and then you go over to a video, let's say, my wife again will say if the video is longer than 3 or 4 minutes, she's not going to watch it, right? So this video is 10 minutes long. She definitely would not watch this video, right? So if I have that extension loaded in, I can actually, it creates this new little bar here. And I can say, give me a summary, view summary of ChatGPT. And it will watch the video for me, or better yet, take the transcript. And it gives me a summary and the highlights. Bingo, bango. So that's pretty cool. I tried it with a Prince video and it just said music and audience clapping, lots of stuff happening. It was underwhelming for me, but that's okay. Okay. Teach me, how about that? Teach me how to crochet. That's pretty cool. It gives you, again, a springboard. It doesn't tell you everything and all the details unless you tell it, hey, elaborate on number 3. If you notice it's not giving you like resources, you're going to figure that out. For me, the benefit of this is just gives me an outline of, oh yeah, I need to think about that, right? I need to maybe look for a YouTube video on slip knots, chain stitches, etc. Right? So it gives me a place to start. Again, it's scaffolding me, right? It just tells me that I need to go find some more information on that. Okay. And I encourage you to play around with that as much as you can. You can have it solve a math problem. Math is tricky though, because, math has, sometimes formulas and stuff like that that are hard to put into a web piece here. But there is a Chrome extension for having ChatGPT recognize formulas, right? But I'm not a math teacher, so I don't really use this a lot, but I just want to point out there are plenty of YouTube videos that show you how to use ChatGPT to solve math equations and such. Which reminds me, you could say something like this. You can do it personally, like, which is better, to invest my money and get 4.05% AP Y, or pay off my mortgage at 4.05. See what it says. And it gives me a bunch of different considerations, goes into a lot. It doesn't give me anything more because I didn't tell it any amount, right? I didn't tell it how much, but if I went into more details about that, it's going to do the calculations for me, right? That's pretty cool. We did the lesson plan, but we did the create a story or scene. Oh, the haiku. I love this one. So if I did this, and I will select the whole thing. Rewrite this as a haiku. And that was a long article, right? Oh, it's wrong. Too long for a haiku. Oh, now I had to remind it that it, was not accurate. How would I know this though? Like, what if you told your students, I want you to do a haiku for whatever, and they went in there and created this and turned this in? Well, right then you would know that they didn't pay attention. You'd say, why is that not a haiku? Tell me why that's not a haiku. They're like, it is a haiku. No, what are the components of a haiku? And you had that conversation with them, right? And then they realize, oh, I said, put it back in ChatGPT because I know you used it. So put it back in there and say, no, a real haiku. And then it'll give it back to you with the 17 syllables and everything. And that kid is going to remember, oh, yeah, okay, haiku's got to have 17 syllables. They're going to remember that for a long time, because think about how many times you made a mistake in an assessment or test or whatever, you got the wrong answer, then you found out the right answer, and you remember that longer than you did the ones that you already had known, right? Because that's just how our brains work, right? We never finished that rewrite an email based on tone. I think we would all agree that this is not an appropriate email, right? That you don't write that to someone else, right? That's rude, right? So we're going to rewrite, or no, check this email for me. Like I do this a lot of times whenever I'm emailing somebody, just to see if I'm using some diction that may be missing. Oh Lord, it didn't just check it, it rewrote it. Kind of wordy. I was like too wordy. Rewrite this with the same length. I'm going to use your language here. Be friendly, but firm. Okay. Rewrite to only 5 sentences. Too many sentences. And you can do that back and forth with it, because remember, it's learning. It's not going to do it perfectly every time, right? I encourage you to play around with this, because again, you shouldn't just copy and paste what you just see on that screen. You should take it, read through it, and modify it yourself. But again, it saves you a lot of time from like, oh God, how do I say this? Which, by the way, it will also do one other thing. I can say, give me advice on speaking with a colleague about her abusive treatment of, not abusive, that's really harsh, her unkind treatment of the para-pros. No, I don't want it to do an email. Here, let me copy that. That's why I think I always do the new chat. I'm going to do a new chat because I think it thinks I'm still wanting to do an email. So it's going to give me kind of an action plan, right? And it gives me a bunch of different ideas. Again, take them or leave them, right? But I think this is really good because sometimes it's like, gosh, I don't even know where to start, right? And anytime I tell myself, oh, I don't know where to start, I can pop this in here and at least give me some ideas. I don't have to do all of them, but I can think, okay, this is helping me kind of reframe the situation here, right? Okay, so there's that one. I like that one a lot. I do also like the meal and exercise plan. I'll do a new one. To lose 1 pound every 10 days with a maximum of 10 pounds. So it gives me this idea, right? So it provides me all these different, like, whatever, the exercise plan, very general. meal plan. How about can you give me a grocery list for the meal plan? Oh, that's pretty cool. Blake, when you're talking about the IEPs and 504s, in some ways, yeah, you can, but you got to remember again, the skill in ChatGPT, like if you notice, like when it's looking up information, it finds some good information, but it makes up other information. Its real skill is in taking patterns of writing and formulate, reformulating it to the context that we want. I think for me, it'd be like you can do like if you wrote something like I'm like give me some refrigerator tips. It's not even typing it. Give me some refrigerator door tips for parents on the following modifications. For example, less screen time, more focus on audio, reduce distractions. I'm just going to throw in those. So it gives, again, some ideas for your families, right? But for you too, like if you want to type in, like let's say you do a report, either a report on a student or you're writing an IEP, you can put it in there and just say, write this in friendly language, for a 10-year-old or something like that. And I say 10-year-old because that's a general rule for most adults to be able to read something quickly, right? Where you don't have as much technical, and you can actually tell it, leave the technical language in there. If it's critical, leave the acronyms in there. So for me, I would do it to rewrite things for parents' benefit or to make it easier to read for people. You could put, what are some effective modifications for ADHD? Blake, does that help? And then that way you can kind of take those and then kind of run with them, right? You can, break it down. You can, okay, how about okay, take these modifications and rewrite them, as a narrative piece in an email. I like that, to minimize distractions. Let's create, I like how it uses let's, like we're a team and everything. And then again, I would take that, kind of play around with it a little bit, right? All kinds of possibilities. Okay, so there's that. We did the additional functions and all that stuff. We have played with, I'm sorry I didn't spend as much time on the math, but that's just not my thing. I'm not an expert in that area by any stretch. I think, again, the big takeaway is this is another tool, albeit a very powerful tool in your toolbox. And you do not want students to have unfettered access to it, but you certainly want them, in my opinion, my professional opinion, you want them to be able to use it. Because I guarantee you, kids are going to use it. The ones who have resources to use it are especially going to use it. But, I'll take my own son as an example. I know he uses it. He talks about using it, and he will talk about it as if it is a tool. And he will point out, yeah, I don't think it knows how to do this, this, and this, but it helped me organize my thoughts to do this, this, and this, right? I think it's like anything. We need to have conversations with our students. Their television can be good or bad, and research shows that if we have conversations with students about our own children about television, about technology, they're going to do much better. So I think we need to have real conversations and not make it so controversial and adversarial, but rather bring it in and say, let's see how we can use this, because here's what I need you to be able to do. And let's see how we can use this to help us get to that point, okay? And keep it positive. All right, I'm going to send you out, right? I'm going to send you out and let you kind of play with this as you wish to. Melissa is going to post some information in the chat about the evaluation and getting your certificate and all of that. If she's not able to, don't worry, we've got you down, and we're going to make sure that you get your credit and all of that stuff for that. But before we go, oh, there we go. Thank you so much, Melissa. She just posted that in the chat. As you are leaving, pick one of these prompts, if you don't mind, and say, I liked something, I learned something, I'll try something, or I wonder. Put that in the chat. That way I can look through there, and next time we have a PD, we can explore those ideas too. And thank you for your patience. I know it was a lot of talk heavy, but I really appreciate your time with this. So enjoy, and be mindful. Thank you.